Finally, we're going to continue our evolution of the Koopalings miniseries. This time, we're going to look at Wendy Koopa. How did she change in terms of use, gameplay, story, and design? Well, let's find out. Wendy Koopa, also known as Cootie Pie Koopa in the cartoons. She's the only female of the group and was named after famous musician Wendy Williams, lead singer of the punk band The Plasmatics. Just like all the other Koopalings, she was first seen in Super Mario Bros. 3, where they were in charge of taking over the various kingdoms of the Mushroom World. Wendy decides to take over the Kingdom of Waterland, steals the magic wand of the king, and changes him into a Spike or a Dino Rhino. Of course, Mario goes after her and tries to reverse it all, and when he reaches her airship, they fight. This is where it gets really interesting. These characters were only made to function as mini-bosses after all. Besides that, they don't have a whole lot of depth when it comes to their personality. She attacks Mario by tackling him and shooting giant rings of candy at him. After 2 hits, she starts jumping around the room while still throwing candy rings. Now the thing that makes this different from all the other Koopaling fights is the rings, and this is also the biggest challenge. These circular candy rings of death are your biggest problem because every time she throws one, it will bounce around the room forever. And as time goes on, more and more of them will fill the room, making movement difficult. All of a sudden you have to dodge Wendy and 3 rings. This number keeps growing, and what this does is create pressure. The boss decides the battle's pacing and slowly builds up the speed and difficulty. Thanks to this, the player is forced to deal with the boss as quickly as possible because it can go wrong extremely fast. This is a fun twist since a lot of the Koopalings are a bit basic in terms of moves, so it's fun to have one that decides the pacing and cranks it up as the battle goes on. Now she was also seen in the next 2D Mario game just like all the others, the legendary Super Mario World. In this game they're invading Dinosaur Island and Wendy takes over the chocolate section, and yet again Mario goes after her. In battle she attacks using the same attack pattern as Lemmy. She pops out of a random warp pipe with 2 Wendy dolls popping out of 2 other pipes. Mario needs to dodge 2 zigzag lava bubbles and jump on Wendy 3 times to defeat her. Clearly, her tactic is very different from the one seen in the previous game, and in my opinion, it wasn't an improvement. She has the same strategy as Lemmy, which is depressing and lazy to be honest. It's just recycling the fight. A bit of a disappointment, and there isn't a lot left to say about it. And after this, the Koopalings weren't seen for a very long time. Nintendo started to focus on 3D games like Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. They ended up returning when the Wii was made. They wanted to go back to the old 2D formula, but with a more modern approach. And so the new Super Mario Bros series was born. First up, the Wii version. Here, she has 2 boss fights. In this new series, Wendy appears to be the only one of the 7 original Koopalings who has not gone through any major design changes for the game, and it's unknown why. The stage for her tower battle is an ordinary rectangle room with no obstacles. In both of her fights, she attacks with her magic wand to generate rings that rebound from the walls, and it dissolves after a set period of time. After conjuring a ring, she ballet jumps after the player a few times before casting another ring. Each time she hits you, she retreats into her shell and spins it to the right and the left of the room in an attempt to hit you along with the remaining rings. She also jumps faster and higher after the player and casts 2 rings at once when she's stomped on for the 2nd time. When she's defeated by the 3rd jump, she retreats back to her castle. This fight goes back to the good old days of Super Mario Bros 3, but makes it incredibly easy. The rings that make the fight in that game amazing are now a lot weaker and even disappear over time. The boss no longer decides the pacing because the rings aren't really a factor anymore. They even increase the size of the room, making them even more useless and easier to dodge. The fight in Super Mario Bros 3 wasn't incredibly difficult, so I don't get why Nintendo made it even more easy. Now we also have the castle fight. This one is supposed to be more difficult than the tower one, however, they made it even easier. She attacks in a similar manner to a previous battle, but at the beginning of the battle, Kamek causes the room to flood periodically. The flood prevents the player from jumping on her due to not having enough pressure from the jump. So instead, you will have to evade all the rebounding rings, and of course Wendy herself, and wait for the flood to drain away. However, you can still swim around, so stomping her is still possible, and the rings move slower in the water, so they are extremely easy to dodge. It can even save you when one of the rings is coming at you and is slowed by the water. This gives you a good chance to dodge it. And if you have a fire flower, then this fight is even easier since you can just use it underwater. Overall, the water helps you more than it helps Wendy. One way they could have solved this is by adding something to the water, like extra enemies. In the background you can see Fishbone. Those would have been great in this fight. Every time the water rises, 2 of those fish come out as well and try to take you down. It would have made the fight a lot better and a bit more difficult. Now in the next game, New Super Mario Bros 2, much like in the previous game, her battle once again takes place underwater. Although this time, there are 4 blue pipes. Groups of 3 Cheep Cheeps swim out of there when Wendy jumps through the water, and 2 of them also jump from the water while she attacks in her shell. She also needs to whistle in order to fill the room up with water and to get rid of it. And after a short period of time, the water disappears on its own. Now clearly the concept with the bonefish that came up earlier was implemented in this game. And no, I didn't look at all the games from the go. I usually work my way down, so I didn't expect this at all. I never played New Super Mario Bros 2. Clearly Nintendo and I had the same plan. This idea works really well, especially with her way of summoning the fish. Because if you're good, then you can cancel it. So being fast is rewarding, because then you don't have to deal with the fish. However, her rings are gone, making her easier in some ways. She still isn't very difficult, but now she at least has tactics that work and make sense. The water is there to make the fight harder, not easier. In the previous fight, it didn't really limit your capacity to damage Wendy, it just slowed things down. Now she was also seen in the most recent New Super Mario Bros game for the Wii U. And here things changed. A lot actually. In the Battle of the Wii game, she already had a bit of a ballet feel, and in this game, they continue the trend. In her boss battle, she skates around the arena, shooting out 2 golden rings that ricochet off the walls and can knock down the icicles at the ceiling of the airship. And after she is jumped on twice, she will shoot out 3 rings instead. This has to be the best fight so far. The tactics are interesting and have cool side effects. The arena looks beautiful and she moves in a really elegant way. It's really cool the rings can knock down the icicles on the ceiling. All of a sudden, the attack has 2 stages and tries to hit you in either of the 2. First you need to dodge the rings, and after that you will have to dodge the ice. This is quite special for a Koopaling fight, because normally Nintendo doesn't do stuff like this. Which is quite a shame actually, since it adds more depth to the attacks, and it feels like the boss thinks about what he or she does and what kind of impact it can have. The arena is also really cool, and the spikes themselves also add difficulty, since you can't jump too high, because then you will hit them, and the slippery ice also doesn't help. There's only one thing bad about this fight, and I have mentioned this problem in other videos as well. The execution of the ring shooting move is a bit too slow. You can hit her right away if you're good. Now this requires some skill, however, she is so slow that it's actually quite easy. Most people who are good at the game will likely not see the rings at all, which is a real shame since it makes the fight so much more fun. Only the people who can't control Mario very well on the ice will have trouble pulling this off. So luckily enough, the ice makes it a bit harder. There have been other bosses and even Koopalings with the exact same problem. For some reason, Nintendo gives the player a ton of time to cancel attacks. Now this fight with Wendy Koopa is a really good one. Everything from the arena's layout to her moves all work together to make it as difficult for the player as possible. So as you can see people, this lovely Koopa lady went through a number of changes and ended up with an amazing boss fight. And who knows what will happen next. Hey you lovely human being, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. There goes a lot of love and work into these videos, so show your support with kisses and hugs in the comment section. Thank you.